Just a horrific night in St. Louis as the Blackhawks have a pitiful performance against the Blues, and then Connor Bedard gets injured.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcasting network, where we bring you your team every day. I'm Jack Bushman, also Blackhawks beat writer for Chicago Hockey Now. If you're enjoying everything I'm doing here on Locked On Blackhawks, then definitely make sure to go and check out ChicagoHockeyNow.com for all of my Blackhawks written content. On today's episode, I'll discuss a horrendous outing from the Blackhawks in St. Louis and the latest updates that we have on Connor Bedard's status. Then I'll break down Nick Lardis being recalled to the NHL for the first time in his career and where he could draw into the Blackhawks lineup tonight, as Bedard has already been ruled out. And then make sure to stick with me all the way until segment 3, as I'll get into a pair of very promising updates on prospects Marek, Vanacker, and Mason West. Do have to let you all know real quick, though, that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Go and visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, Blackhawks fans, let's go ahead and get right into it. Connor Bedard gets injured in literally the last second of the game in a 3-2 loss to the St. Louis Blues last night. A very frustrating loss, by the way, but I'll be saving my thoughts on that until segment 2 here today. After Wyatt Kaiser hustles to get an icing call with just 0.8 seconds left on the clock, the game was basically just a formality at that point, but on the ensuing offensive zone faceoff, Bedard goes one-on-one with Brayden Schenn, the Blues captain, and right after the puck gets dropped, Schenn went to go and check Bedard to kind of prevent him from getting a scoring chance off the draw, and it looked like Bedard's right shoulder or his right arm just kind of got tangled and moved in a way that it's not supposed to. He went falling down to the ice, holding his arm immediately, and was clearly in a lot of pain while exiting the ice before the rest of his teammates. And I know there were a lot of people on social media not very happy at all about the apparent cross-check from Brayden Schenn that he laid on Bedard there, in addition to none of the rest of the players that were on the ice going and stepping in for Bedard and like taking a whack at Schenn or anything. But honestly, to me, Blackhawks fans, I've watched the replay several different times now, and in my honest opinion, I don't really think Schenn went into that face-off with the mindset of I'm going to go and take a high hit on this kid right here. And I don't think he was trying to do anything dirty on the play. To me, it just looked like he was trying to do everything in his power to tie up Bedard and kind of make a collision happen so that he couldn't get a shot off on his goaltender. And it really just looked like a standard hockey play, again, in my opinion, that just sadly ended up in a freak accident. And I'm honestly not sure, as far as the Blackhawks' lack of a response there. I'm not really sure if any of the Blackhawks saw what happened. I mean, it all happened so fast. It was, like I said, literally in the final second of the game. So even though, like I said, it was probably a formality, they were trying to do everything in their power to get the biscuit on cage before the final horn sounded. I'm not really sure anyone saw exactly what happened. And again, I don't really think it was a dirty play intentionally from Brayden Schenn. Maybe, the cross-check got up a little bit high there on Bedard, but honestly, head coach Jeff Blashill they didn't have a morning skate this morning because it's a back-to-back here this weekend. But when he was talking with the media, he actually kind of hinted that what happened to Bedard may have occurred before Schenn ever made contact with him. So not exactly sure if Schenn's cross-check there led to that injury. Don't really have much of an update on Bedard's status at this point in time, but undoubtedly concerning to see him, having that type of reaction and be in such pain after suffering the injury. You could see kind of the reaction to the rest of the Blackhawks as they were watching Bedard hurry off the ice and head down the tunnel in an instant. It definitely didn't look good, Blackhawks fans, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed here, wearing the Bedsy jersey and support that. Hopefully it's nothing broken. Maybe, I don't want to speculate or anything, and we don't even know if it's a shoulder, if it's an arm, or exactly what's wrong with him at this point in time. Blashill really didn't provide much details following last night's game, other than saying that Bedard has already been ruled out for tonight's contest against the Red Wings, and that the team is expected to know more probably on Monday when the Blackhawks hit the ice at Fifth Third Arena for practice. So, yeah, man, really hoping everything's going to wind up being okay with Bedard. Like I said, it definitely didn't look good, but don't want to speculate one way or the other when we don't know if it's going to be a long-term or short-term injury. But as far as what this means for the Blackhawks, definitely praying that it's not anything long-term, because we know how crucial Connor Bedard has been to the success and how competitive this group has been through their opening 31 games, right? I just broke down the team stats and the forward stats and analytics on the episode prior to yesterday as well. And when diving through all of those numbers, it's pretty clear that the Blackhawks are near the bottom in, Corsi for, scoring chances for to scoring chances against, or just scoring chance differential and expected goals for percentage. And a huge reason why they have this record, despite some of those underlying analytics, is, well, yes, because of their goaltending from Spencer Knight. It also helps that coming into last night, both of their special teams units ranked in the top 10 in the NHL. But it's undoubtedly also because of Connor Bedard, as he's factored in on nearly 50% of the team's goals this season. And yeah, don't even really want to think about what this Blackhawks offense would look like without number 98 in the lineup. And you also got to wonder, or just think about how this could potentially impact Bedard's chances of making Team Canada's roster for the 2026 Olympics. Really unfortunate time for something like this to happen, but again, not 100% sure how long Bedard is going to be out of the lineup, but we do know that he's at least not going to be suiting up here tonight. But also what this means for the Blackhawks is they need more offense in their lineup, and with Bedard out, the Hawks decided to recall top prospect Nick Lardis from the Rockford IceHogs of the AHL just about an hour ago now at the time of this recording. Felt like that was probably on the horizon, not only because of Bedard's injury, but also just with the way that Lardis has been producing down in the AHL in his first season at the professional level. Added another goal last night in the IceHogs 4-2 victory. That now gives him 13 goals along with 13 assists for 26 points in his opening 24 games. Those 13 goals are second among all AHL rookies. The 26 points lead all AHL rookies. And in total, his 13 goals ranks fourth in the league among all skaters, not just rookies. And he's also tied for sixth in the AHL in points as well among all players. So yeah, Lardis has been fantastic right from the jump down in Rockford, and looks like his game has translated pretty darn well over to the AHL level at the very least. But the question still remains about whether Lardis's game will follow over against the top competition in the entire world here in the NHL. And finally, we're about to find out. And while it unfortunately comes so soon because of Bedard's injury, even if Bedard hadn't have gotten hurt last night against the Blues, I've talked about on the show how feels like Lardis is just kind of forcing the front office's hand here with the way that he's been playing down in the AHL. And also, he's basically producing at the same rate that Frank Nazar was this time last year. I'm sure you all remember, with Kyle Davidson just being so patient with all of his prospects, Frankie Nazar probably could have made the NHL club out of training camp last year. However, there's that thrive, not survive mentality throughout the organization. So they had Frankie open up the year down in the AHL, and he went on to produce 24 points, 11 goals, and 13 assists in his opening, excuse me, Blackhawks fans, still dealing with a little bit of a cold here. Tallied 24 points in his opening 21 AHL games, and then that led to his first call-up last season where he remained with the Blackhawks for the remainder of the campaign. So 24 points in 21 games for Nazar last year, 26 points in 24 games here this season for Nick Lardis. So he's been knocking on the door for that promotion. He's been deserving of it, Blackhawks fans. If Bedard hadn't gotten hurt, I felt like the Lardis call-up was going to come sometime here soon. Personally, I was guessing probably early to mid-January if he was keeping up this pace. The only reason why I think maybe the Blackhawks would have been a little bit more patient with Lardis compared to Frankie Nazar is they could have used Nazar and his speed, his offensive abilities, and two-way play down the middle last year. Now the Blackhawks, that they are more competitive than they were last season as well and have more bodies up in the NHL already. I just think that allowed them to have this a little bit more of a patient mentality with Nick Lardis, but now down Bedard, the Hawks could use some offensive help, and the 2023 third-round pick is absolutely known for that. A reminder of what Lardis produced in the OHL last season: 71 goals in 65 games for the Brantford Bulldogs, becoming just the 13th player in OHL history to record 70 goals in a single season, and the first since John Tavares way back in 2006-2007. Not too shabby for a kid that was selected early on in the third round. Lardis also added 46 assists for 117 points in those 65 games. And he also became just the 8th skater since 2000 in the CHL. That includes the OHL, the WHL, and the QMJHL to reach the 70-goal plateau in one campaign. So Lardis had an ecstatic, a thrilling, stellar junior career. He's carried that over into the start of his professional career down at the AHL level with the IceHogs, and we've been discussing for a couple of years now about whether Nick Lardis' game was going to translate at the final level, and we finally get to find out here tonight as he will be making his NHL debut against the Detroit Red Wings. Unfortunate that it happens probably a little sooner than it was going to initially because of the Bedard injury. Obviously, that's bringing the mood down around the Blackhawks right now, but should still be very exciting to see Nick Lardis, one of the top prospects in the organization, a guy who, if his skills do transfer over, could really be a key top 6 puzzle piece for the Blackhawks here in their rebuild. Excited to see what Nick Lardis has in store for us tonight at the United Center. There are my quick thoughts on the Connor Bedard injury, which leads to Nick Lardis getting his first NHL call-up here today. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, I'll talk about where we could see Lardis draw into the lineup for his NHL debut, and I'll also talk a little bit more about last night's frustrating loss to the St. Louis Blues. But first, I do got to talk to you all about one of today's sponsors here on Locked On Blackhawks, which is FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, and one big play can suddenly make everything feel different. But that's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, and every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, when a receiver gets hot or a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips right after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump right into the moment so that you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, go and visit FanDuel.com and place your live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so could you. As always, real quick, before I get into segment 2, just a reminder to please subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. It's 100% free, will not cost you anything, and I have a goal of 3,000 subscribers before 2025 comes to a close. We're creeping up on that point, so please help me out if you can by hitting that subscribe button. Will not cost you anything and helps me out in a big way in growing my platform. All right, segment 2, before I get into a preview of tonight's matchup with Patrick Kane, Alex DeBrincat, and the Red Wings at the United Center. Second Original Six matchup in as many games on home ice for the Blackhawks. I do first want to talk about, in my opinion, the totally unacceptable loss that the Blackhawks suffered last night in St. Louis, as it was seriously one of the most frustrating losses that I've watched the Blackhawks suffer this year. And I thought it was super disappointing to see the Hawks be sleepy right out of the gate when the Blues were on the back end of a back-to-back, had to travel from Nashville to St. Louis. As I outlined on yesterday's show, they were waxed 7-2 by the Predators on Thursday night. I thought it was a real great opportunity for the Blackhawks to kind of carry over that momentum and keep it going after a real strong, maybe their best team win of the season, and a 3-0 victory over the Rangers on Wednesday. Playing one of the worst teams in the league. The Blues were fourth to last in the Western Conference standings coming into this one. They had given up 12 goals over their last 2 games, ranked 30th in the NHL in goals against per game, not to mention ranking 31st in the NHL in goals per game. I mean, one of the worst teams in the league, one of the biggest disappointments this season in a building where the Blackhawks, picked up a massive 8-3 victory. One of the most fun games that I've watched the Blackhawks play in like 3, 4, 5 years. I don't know. So it was really frustrating considering all of that to watch the Blackhawks be asleep at the wheel for basically the opening 45, 50 minutes of this game. And it felt like it was also one of the worst starts that the Blackhawks have had this year, which has been a really strong part of their game in 25-26. They've only surrendered, coming into Friday night's matchup, they had only surrendered 17 goals in the first period, which was the lowest in the entire NHL. And then they went and gave up 2 in the opening 13 minutes, while it took them over 8 minutes to pick up their first shot on goal. And both of the goals scored by St. Louis were a result of pretty clear defensive breakdowns by the Blackhawks. The first one, by the way, I do want to highlight Frankie Nazar. Just unacceptable lack of hustle shown defensively in transition. Nazar commits a tripping penalty in the defensive zone. I understand mistakes happen, and I wasn't even upset that he kind of threw his arms up in the air at the officials in disagreement with the call. Like, that's fine. I get it. You're not going to agree with everything that happens out there. But what isn't okay is Nazar kind of, pardon my language, half-ass skating on his way back. I mean, if you go and watch the clip, you know how Frankie Nazar can skate, especially now that he's seemingly gotten healthier in these past couple of weeks. Didn't provide any effort whatsoever to get back on the play, was just kind of frustrated with what the officials called. But you cannot let that dictate how you go about your business. And for Frankie to not, work his rear end off to get back into that play, it allowed, who was it? Logan Mailloux, that scumbag, to go and be wide open down the left flank. Ripped a shot through Louis Crevier's wickets and past Spencer Knight's glove. Initially, I thought it was a little bit of a soft goal that Knight surrendered, but then seeing the replay, it clearly went through Crevier's legs, which makes it tough for a goaltender to kind of track there. And then the second goal that the Blues scored, another shoddy defensive sequence by the Blackhawks. It was just a 3-on-3 rush for the Blues, but somehow Matt Luff, who, like Logan Mailloux, didn't have a goal on the season coming into this game, he gets left all alone right down Broadway in the most dangerous area of the ice. Not a very good defensive sequence there for Andrei Burakovsky, Artem Levshinov, and Matt Grzelcyk. You got to cover the most dangerous piece of the ice, and Burakovsky, I don't think, did a good job of passing over the puck carrier along the left side off to Artie Levshinov, and then kind of getting back into the middle of the ice. The gap control by Grzelcyk and Levshinov was really shaky there as well, and I think that's kind of a reminder of what can happen when you leave your 2 best offensive defensemen on the ice together in those defensive situations. Neither Levshinov nor Grzelcyk, very 2 different parts of their careers, obviously, but not known for their defensive abilities, more so known for moving the puck in the offensive zone. Shaky defensive moment there from the Blackhawks, puts them in a 2-0 hole early. Do want to give credit to them for fighting back in the final 5 minutes to kind of make the opening period not look as poor as it was. Wyatt Kaiser, who I've talked on the show, especially during these deep dives, one that I just had yesterday, I talked about how I want to see Kaiser be more involved on the offensive side of things. And funny enough, he even mentioned that during his post-game media availability yesterday. Absolutely rifled a wrist shot over Joel Hofer's glove to cut the Blackhawks deficit in half. That was his second goal of the season and also second in the past 5 games. Felt like the Blackhawks, might have generated some juice going into that first intermission, but didn't carry over whatsoever early on in the second period. And then the Blues went on to make it a 2-goal game, once again striking near the midway point. And it came off of another time where the Blackhawks just gave the opposing puck carrier way too much time and space to work with in the offensive zone. Ryan Green just clearly lost Justin Falk in coverage. That allowed Falk to kind of drive from the right circle all the way down to the front of the net on Spencer Knight, and then snuck a little bit of a soft shot past him short side to make it 3-1 St. Louis. The Blackhawks didn't really have much of a response the rest of the second period. I will say, in the last 5-10 minutes of the contest, that's when the Blackhawks finally showed some signs of life. Excellent effort, by the way, from Connor Bedard to make something out of nothing, forcing a turnover and poking a puck over to Andre Burakovsky for his 8th goal of the season. Second point of the game for both Bedard and Burakovsky, but it wound up being too little too late for Chicago. Looking at the stats from this one, the Blackhawks only generated 7 high danger scoring opportunities in 60 minutes. Again, I just mentioned the Blues had given up 12 goals in their last 2 games. Both of their goaltenders have a save percentage below .890, second to last in the NHL in goals per game. I mean, to go and put up 7 high danger scoring opportunities against a team in the back end of a back-to-back when you should have the advantage and have the fresher legs, completely unacceptable. Outside of Connor Bedard, outside of Andre Burakovsky, and a nice goal from Wyatt Kaiser, thought it was a pretty dreadful offensive performance from the Blackhawks. And then defensively, it wasn't, too horrible in total. If you go and look at the stats and the analytics, the Blackhawks really didn't give up all that much. It was a pretty low event hockey game, but they definitely made the bigger mistakes and had the bigger blunders between the two sides. The Blues capitalized when they gave them way too much open ice and time to go and work with, and the Blackhawks weren't able to claw their way back from the early deficit that they dug themselves. And now they, of course, find themselves in the back end of a back-to-back, which has not gone very well for them this season. In their 2 back ends of back-to-backs, they've been outscored 16-4, losing 9-3 to the Buffalo Sabres, and of course 7-1 last Sunday to the Anaheim Ducks. And they're going to be tested here tonight without Connor Bedard in what would have been a real exciting game had Bedard not suffered the injury. Still going to be a good one at the UC, of course, as Patrick Kane, Alex DeBrincat, and the Detroit Red Wings come to town for the second and final meeting this season. Like I said earlier, another Original Six matchup on home ice, and it's also Chris Chelios' bobblehead night at the UC. Patrick Kane is 3 goals shy of 500 for his career. What a night it would be for Keener to go and pick up a hat trick as he's back in Chicago to reach 500 for his career. But I do feel like because of the Bedard injury, even with Nick Lardis getting recalled, I feel like it definitely has dampened the mood on tonight's contest. Not to mention, the -3 degree weather that we're having in Chicago here today. Am not looking forward to walking out of the United Center around 11:30 p.m. Central Time when it's probably going to be like -10, maybe feeling like -20 there because of the wind chill. I am going to be buttoning up with a lot of jackets, scarves, and a whole lot of other goodies. But coming into this game, the Detroit Red Wings are 17-12-3 through 32 games, giving them 37 points, has them sitting 3rd place in the NHL's Atlantic Division, which is just 1 point back of the 1st place Tampa Bay Lightning, who just lost stud defenseman Victor Hedman for the next 6 weeks due to an elbow injury. And they're also just 1 point back of the 2nd place Boston Bruins. And after losing their final 4 games in the month of November, the Wings have been excellent so far here in December with a 4-1-1 record, in 6 games. But they are coming off of a 4-1 loss to the Edmonton Oilers in their last time out on Thursday. Defenseman Simone Edvinsson, former first-round pick for the Wings, scored their only goal, while shout out to Arvid Soderblom's younger brother, Elmer, for picking up his first assist of the season on the lone tally. And going back to the first meeting between these two teams, which didn't occur not all that long ago, back on November 16th at Little Caesars Arena, Blackhawks picked up a nice 5-1 victory in that contest. Connor Bedard picked up 3 points. He had 1 goal and 2 assists. Well, Teuvo Teravainen, Tyler Bertuzzi, and Andre Burakovsky all netted 2 points as well. And then in the final moments of the 3rd period, we saw Oliver Moore score his first NHL goal to put a little cherry on top of an awesome performance on a Sunday afternoon for the Blackhawks. As far as Chicago's projected lineup goes here tonight, did not have a morning skate since it's the back end of a back-to-back, and Blashill didn't exactly lay out how he's going to go about his forward lines now that Connor Bedard is obviously out of the lineup. We also know Nick Lardis is going to be in there Don't know who Lardis is going to be playing with for sure, but Blashill did say he's going to be playing with skill guys who make sense to put on a line with him. So to me, I do think we're going to see Nick Lardis play on the Blackhawks top line. I think he deserves that opportunity. If it's not the first line, he's definitely going to be on the second line. You want him inside of the top six. But thinking about how the Blackhawks want to handle their center position, I'm assuming that Ryan Green is going to go back down the middle. We do know that Frankie Nazar, Blashill did say that Frank is going to be the first line center here tonight. Would be a great night for him to snap that 19-game goal drought that he's currently going through. I feel like putting him with Nick Lardis and the pace that they play with makes a lot of sense. I'm just wondering who's going to be that right wing on that top line. Is it going to be Andre Burakovsky? Or is it going to be Tyler Bertuzzi, who's been playing with Nazar over these last couple of weeks? Regardless, I feel like you do want one veteran up there with those two guys. So that's why I feel like it's going to be either Bert or Burakovsky. As of right here, right now, I'm guessing we're going to see Nick Lardis, Frank Nazar, and Andre Burakovsky as the Blackhawks top line. On the second line, I think we're going to see Teuvo Teravainen rejoin the top six. I feel like Oliver Moore, since he's been on that second line, well, he's been playing okay. The second line just hasn't been getting the finished product, and I feel like this is a chance to kind of switch things up. So I'm seeing Teuvo on the second line with Ryan Green in that 2C spot, and then Tyler Bertuzzi out on the right wing. That has Oliver Moore in the third line left wing spot, replacing Teravainen. Then I think Blashill is going to keep Jason Dickinson and Ilya Mikheyev. I think that's still a very reliable checking line for him to utilize. And then we also know not only is Nick Lardis going to be playing in his first NHL game ever, but Dominic Toninato is also going to be playing in his first NHL game as a member of the Blackhawks. I guess he's probably going to be centering that fourth line. That's where Ryan Donato has been as of late, but between the two, Toninato is the more true center iceman. And I'm guessing that leaves Colton Dach on the left side and then Ryan Donato on the right side. However, I will mention there is a chance I think Donato could be brought back up into the top six, potentially. Maybe if they don't want Teuvo on the second line, you could throw Donato out there with Ryan Green and Tyler Bertuzzi. Teuvo does provide the better place, but I think Donato is a little bit more of a rugged player. But it does appear that Sam Lafferty is going to be the odd man out of the forward group, as he was seen skating with Nick Lardis this morning while the Blackhawks did not have a morning skate. So probably indicates that Lafferty is going to be healthy scratched here tonight. Defensively, I don't think we're going to see any changes, even though, yes, there were defensive blunders, but altogether, I didn't think it was like a putrid defensive performance. There were just a few clear-cut mistakes the Blackhawks made, and the Blues did a good job of pouncing on them. That means it's going to be Vlasic and Crevier as the top pairing, Matt Grzelcyk and Artem Levshinov as the second pairing. Might have to, hold them to a little bit more offensive situations considering the sequence they had defensively last night. And then Wyatt Kaiser, who, as I mentioned, 2 goals in his last 5 games. Keep giving us more of that, Wyatt Kaiser. We need your offensive contributions from the back end, along with Connor Murphy on the third line. And then in between the pipes, with Spencer Knight going last night, that leaves Arvid Soderblom once again to start in the back end of a back-to-back, which he was in there against the Buffalo Sabres, also in there against the Anaheim Ducks. Don't think either of those games you can blame solely on him, but is just something worth pointing out when back-to-backs have not gone well for Chicago. However, Soderblom was excellent in the first meeting against the Red Wings earlier this season, stopping 45 of 46 shots in that 5-1 victory back on November 9th. I think I accidentally said it was November 15th a few moments ago. But ever since then, yeah, it's been a struggle for Soderblom. He's given up 20 goals in his last 3 games. Not too many, though, I think were truly his fault, but that's really put his statistics on the year in a really bad place. Now has a .392 goals against average and an .877 save percentage. Hopefully his team can help him out and give him a little bit more support than they have in his past 3 starts. Real quick, 3 keys to victory for the Blackhawks tonight in Detroit, which is not going to be easy on a back end of a back-to-back without Connor Bedard. Speaking of that, my number 1 key to victory is without Bedard. It's hard to imagine the Blackhawks are in for an offensive explosion tonight. So I feel like they need to have the same mentality defensively as they did on Wednesday against the Rangers and just clean up some of those errant mistakes that they made last night in St. Louis. Do not give the Red Wings forwards, especially the most dangerous ones, too much time and space to work with because they're going to make you pay. If the Blackhawks kind of clean up some of those mistakes, I do think they can have another strong performance defensively here tonight on home ice. Number 2 key to victory is you can't let Kane and Kat steal the show. Obviously, Patrick Kane stole the show when it was Chris Chelios' jersey retirement last year. Well, now it's Chris Chelios' bobblehead night. Cannot let those two take over in their return to Chicago. DeBrincat leads the Red Wings with 34 points on the season. Patty Kane has 21, 5 goals and 16 assists in 23 games played. You know they're likely going to play together, and they might even have Chicago native JT Compher centering their line, and he seems to always bring his best stuff when he's playing against his hometown team. So got to keep an eye on all 3 of those forwards every time they're on the ice and not let them run wild and take this game over for the Red Wings. And then my third and final key to victory is you need Arvid to be big like he was last time against when these two teams faced off. Need him to bounce back, need the team in front of him to, like I said a moment ago, provide some more help. If they give up more than 3 goals tonight, it's going to be very tough for the Blackhawks to get 2 points. I think in order to pick up that first win in a back-to-back series this year, Arvid Soderblom probably has to limit the Red Wings to 2 goals or fewer. All right, that takes care of my preview of tonight's matchup at the United Center between the Red Wings. 7 p.m. puck drop in Chicago, with the game being televised back on CHSN. Coming up in just a moment, before I close out today's episode, still have to get into some updates on Marek Vanacker and Mason West. But first, I got to talk to you all about another one of today's sponsors here on Locked On Blackhawks, which is Monarch. The holidays are amazing, but they can also get overwhelming fast. Travel, gifts, parties, year-end expenses. It's really easy to lose track of your money this time of the year. And that's exactly why Monarch has become such a game changer for me. If you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, then you need to be using Monarch. Rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, Monarch is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, super easy-to-use dashboard, both available on your phone and on your laptop. In minutes, you can check your net worth, link all of your accounts, and keep track of contributions right before deadlines. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks any longer. Go and use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps at monarch.com in your browser, and you'll also get half off on your first year. Again, that's 50% off on your first year at monarch.com when you use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Segment 3, real quick before I wrap up today's episode, do still want to get into a quick Blackhawks prospect update. And I mentioned a few days ago on the show that Marek Vanacker, the 27th overall pick in the 2024 NHL draft, somehow was snubbed by Team Canada on its initial 27-player roster that they dropped on Monday. Well, looks like Canada made up for their mistake, as they actually announced on Friday afternoon that Vanacker was a late addition to the selection camp roster, and that occurred because Michael Misa, the number 2 overall pick in 2025 for the San Jose Sharks, he's still dealing with a little bit of an injury. He is remaining in San Jose for the time being to continue rehabbing. However, the expectation is still that Misa is going to be loaned to the Canadiens for the tournament. But undoubtedly, Marek Vanacker deserved the opportunity to prove himself in selection camp to make Team Canada's 2026 WJC roster. And now he's going to get that opportunity after getting a late invite. And I thought it was kind of funny that I mentioned, I believe on Tuesday or Wednesday, that Vanacker, being the leading goal scorer in the entire OHL, potted 2 goals on Wednesday or Thursday, giving him 26 now in his opening 26 games. Scoring at a goal per game pace, it would have made 2 years in a row in which Team Canada didn't invite the leading goal scorer in the Ontario Hockey League, as Michael Misa actually was the one who was in that exact same situation last year. And then because of Misa's current injury, that's how Vanacker winds up working his way on the team. But with Vanacker, with what he's been doing in the OHL this year for Brantford, I don't know how he got left off of the roster, even if Canada has a luxury of riches to choose from once again. And even if they do have a lot of goal scorers, well, that's obviously what's jumping off the charts this year for Vanacker. He's been a pretty good, well-rounded player for the Bulldogs in his time with the club. I mean, he's been a consistent member of the penalty kill unit. can play on both special teams, has some good speed for a 6'1" frame and uses it pretty effectively as kind of a power forward-ish style player. So, well, yeah, I could see why the Canadians maybe were thinking of other things down in their bottom six. Marek Vanacker isn't just a one-trick pony. He is a guy who can go and help out your team in a lesser role down on the third and fourth line. So that's why I was really confused why he was snubbed off the initial roster, but all's well that ends well. Vanacker now gets his opportunity. Not only, by the way, is he leading the OHL with 26 goals on the season, he's also tied for fourth in points. He's second with 8 power play tallies. He also has 8 multi-goal performances this year, with 2 resulting in hat tricks, compared to only 9 games in which he hasn't found the back of the net. He's also second in plus minus. The Brantford Bulldogs are the top team in the entire Ontario Hockey League right now. So, yeah, for many reasons, I was upset that Vanacker got snubbed, but now is part of Canada's selection camp, and if he has a strong next week of practice, which actually began here today, and he was skating on the fourth line along with fellow Brantford Bulldog Jake O'Brien and Cole Rezhny, first-round pick last year. There's still work to be done for Vanacker to make that final roster, but at least he has that opportunity now that he's involved in Team Canada's selection camp. Then I also wanted to mention Mason West, Blackhawks fans, on Wednesday made his USHL season debut with the Fargo Force. And as a reminder, less than a month ago, Mason West quarterbacked Edina High School to a 6A Minnesota State football championship, stayed for his senior year of high school to go and win state in football with his boys, and he accomplished that dream. Didn't have, the most notable season debut for Fargo on Wednesday. 1 shot on goal, was -1 in a 5-1 loss, I want to say. But last night, what a showing from Mason West in just his second game back. He scored twice. The first one let out a huge celebration, also added a secondary assist for a 3-point game to help Fargo win 5-0. What a freak athlete Mason West is. I mean, to have 1 week of practice coming off of the grind of football season from July and August all the way to the latter stages of November, jumps onto the ice once again for Fargo and already has 3 points through his opening 2 games. The kid is an absolute monster, and I just feel like Mason West has that it factor. Very excited to see how his development is going to go next year when he makes the transition to college hockey with Michigan State, one of the best programs in all of college hockey. Real promising updates on both Mason West and Marek Vanacker. All right, that is going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Follow Locked On Blackhawks for free as well, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way, you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes. Until next time, everyone stay warm. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. I'll see you on the next episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.